The sun was sinking low, painting the sky in streaks of gold and crimson. The village square echoed with laughter and chatter. Children ran barefoot on the dusty path, their voices rising like little bells in the evening air. But just outside a large villa, an old woman stood quietly, her frail body trembling as she held a heavy basket. Her thin arms shook, the veins visible beneath her wrinkled skin. She whispered under her breath, almost pleading to herself, "I can't hold it much longer, my arms are tired." Inside the villa, the young fiancé, dressed in expensive clothes and dripping with arrogance, glanced out of the tall glass window. Her lips curled into a smirk. She turned to her friend beside her and said with a mocking laugh, "Look at her, pathetic. Why doesn't she just drop it? Always pretending to be strong when she's clearly weak." The friend giggled, covering her mouth, while the old woman outside struggled. The basket wasn't just filled with vegetables, it carried her pride. For her, it wasn't about the weight of the food. It was about showing respect to her son's home, never arriving empty-handed, no matter how poor she was. Her voice trembled as she called softly through the open gate, "Child, please help me. My arms, they are tired." But instead of kindness, the fiancé's sharp voice cut through the air. "Maybe if you dressed better and acted your age, people would actually help you. Why don't you just leave that basket there and go? My friends don't need to see you like this." The old woman's eyes filled with tears. Her fingers tightened around the basket's rough handles, even as her arms quivered violently. The evening wind brushed against her silver hair, carrying her pain like a whisper across the courtyard. And then footsteps. Strong, steady, and fast. The sound of leather shoes striking against stone grew louder, echoing through the gate like a drumbeat of justice. The fiancé froze mid-laugh. Her friend's smile disappeared. The old woman looked up, startled. It was him, her son. The man who had left the village years ago as a poor boy, mocked for his ragged clothes and empty pockets. But now he was a millionaire. His sharp suit, his commanding presence, and the power in his stride spoke of a man who had conquered life. But in that moment, he wasn't a millionaire. He was just a son, watching his frail mother struggle outside the house he had built with his fortune. "Mother," his voice thundered, heavy with both anger and heartbreak. The fiancé's face turned pale. She stumbled back, her arrogant confidence draining like water from a cracked jug. The old woman's knees gave way, and the basket slipped from her shaking hands, scattering vegetables across the stone path. She sobbed, ashamed of her weakness. But before she could fall, strong arms caught her. Her son knelt, holding her as if she were made of glass. His eyes burned with fury, not at his mother's fragility, but at the cruelty that had allowed her to reach this breaking point. He looked up at the fiancée, his voice cold as ice. "Did you make her stand here like this? Did you ignore her cries?" Silence. Only the sound of the wind rustling through the trees and the soft, broken sobs of the elderly woman. The villagers nearby had gathered, watching in shock. Whispers rippled through the crowd like waves. "Isn't that his mother? Why would she be treated this way? Didn't his fiancée see her struggle?" The fiancé's lips trembled. She had no answer. The son's jaw clenched. He rose slowly, still holding his mother close. And then he said something that made everyone's heart stop. "From this moment, everything changes." What does he mean by everything changes? Will he expose the fiancée in front of everyone, or will he take another path? The courtyard was heavy with silence. The only sound was the faint roll of the basket's vegetables, tomatoes and onions bouncing across the stones, rolling to the feet of the villagers who stood frozen, watching. The son's face was a storm. His eyes, usually calm, now burned with a rage that made even the evening air feel sharp. He placed his trembling mother gently on a wooden bench, his hand never leaving hers. "Mother, you should never have been standing here alone like this," he said, his voice low, almost breaking. Then he turned to the fiancée, and his words turned into lightning. "You heard her cries. You ignored them. You let her stand here, struggling, while you sat inside laughing." The fiancée's lips quivered. She tried to speak, but her throat was dry. I didn't mean." Didn't mean, his voice cracked like a whip. You mocked her. My mother. The woman who carried me in her arms when she was far more tired than this. Do you know what her arms have endured? Do you know how many nights those same arms worked in the fields so I wouldn't sleep hungry? The villagers gasped. Some nodded, their eyes misting, remembering the sacrifices of their own mothers. The old woman tugged gently at her son's sleeve, whispering, "Please don't cause a scene. People are watching." But he shook his head, his chest rising and falling with fury. Let them watch. The world needs to see the truth. He stepped forward. The fiancée tried to smile weakly, hoping to save face. "Darling, you're overreacting. She was only carrying a basket. I thought." "You thought wrong," he cut in, his voice thunderous. "You thought her pain was entertainment. You thought her weakness was funny. But let me tell you, her weakness is stronger than your pride will ever be." The fiancée's face flushed red. Her friends shifted uncomfortably, their laughter gone, their eyes darting to the ground. The son bent down, picking up the scattered vegetables with his bare hands, one by one, placing them carefully back into the basket. Each movement was deliberate, heavy with meaning. The villagers watched in silence, some whispering prayers, others shaking their heads in shame at what had just unfolded. Finally, he stood tall, basket in one hand, his other arm supporting his mother. His voice softened, filled with emotion. "Mother, from today, you will never carry another burden alone." The old woman wept quietly, her tears slipping down her wrinkled cheeks. She clung to his arm, her heart swelling with both sorrow and pride. But as the fiancé reached out, trying to touch his shoulder, his eyes flashed. He pulled away. "No," he said firmly. "You've shown me who you truly are. This engagement is over." The crowd gasped. The fiancée stumbled back, her perfect world cracking around her. The villagers murmured louder now. "She deserved it. He's right to end it." How could she treat his mother that way? The fiancée's knees buckled, but no one stepped forward to help. Not even her so-called friends. They slipped away, quietly, unwilling to stand beside her shame. The son's words echoed through the air like a final judgment. "This house, this wealth, this life, it means nothing if it cannot honor the woman who gave me everything." He lifted his mother into his arms as if she weighed nothing, carrying her inside the villa. The crowd parted respectfully, bowing their heads. The villagers, who had once envied his riches, now admired him more, not for his money, but for his heart. But inside his chest, something darker brewed. The betrayal, the cruelty, the humiliation his mother had endured. It cut deep. And he vowed silently that night this was just the beginning. If his fiancée could mock his mother so easily, who else had been hiding behind masks of respect? And what would he do when he uncovered them? The night had fallen. The villa's chandeliers glowed warmly, but inside, the atmosphere was cold and tense. The old woman sat on a cushioned chair, wrapped in a shawl her son had gently draped over her shoulders. Her frail hands rested in her lap, trembling slightly. Her son knelt in front of her, his voice, soft now, stripped the fury from earlier. "Mother, forgive me. I should have been here sooner. I should have seen through her." She smiled weakly, shaking her head. "You're a good man, my son. Don't carry this blame. People show their true selves when tested. Tonight, she showed hers." He bowed his head, her words piercing his heart. "I trusted her, but she disrespected you. And anyone who disrespects you disrespects me." A sharp knock at the door interrupted them. It was the fiancée. Her eyes were swollen from crying, her pride shattered. She dropped to her knees on the marble floor, her voice desperate. "Please forgive me. I wasn't thinking. I was ashamed of her appearance, not her heart. I was foolish. I'll change. I'll prove it to you both." The old woman's eyes softened with pity. She whispered to her son, "Everyone makes mistakes. Should we not give her a chance to learn?" But he didn't move. His gaze was hard, his voice like stone. Change doesn't come from words spoken in shame. It comes from actions born in truth. And tonight, you chose pride over compassion. The fiancée's tears dripped onto the cold floor. "Please don't end this." But before he could answer, something stirred inside him, a thought, sharp as glass. If she could look down on his mother, how many others in this glittering society were silently mocking the woman who had sacrificed everything for him? His chest tightened. The betrayal was bigger than just one fiancé. It was a reflection of a world blinded by wealth, unable to see true worth. He stood tall, his voice echoing through the villa. This is not just about my mother. This is about everyone who has been mocked for their simplicity, their poverty, their humility. From this night on, I will tear away every mask. I will show them all what true wealth looks like. The fiancée gasped, realizing she had awakened a storm greater than herself. And the old woman, though weak, saw fire in her son's eyes, a fire that would burn long into the nights ahead. How will the millionaire tear away the masks of those who secretly mock and humiliate the humble? What plan is he about to set in motion? 3 nights later, lanterns bloomed across the estate like small suns. Silk banners rippled. A violin hummed in the atrium, its notes silver and soft. Cars lined the avenue, doors thudding, heels ticking, perfumes waking the night. Everyone came. The businessmen with watch faces brighter than their smiles, the ladies with laughter like glass, the mayor, the banker, the jeweler, the school trustee. Even the fiancée returned, pale, tight-lipped, standing in the shimmer of it all like a delicate statue. No one knew why they'd been invited so suddenly. The golden boss cards had said only, an evening to honor the woman who carried the greatest weight. Inside, the main hall glowed with chandeliers. A long table glistened. White linen, polished cutlery, bowls heaped with flowers. Murmurs swelled. Questions fluttered. The millionaire stepped out in a simple black suit. No tie. No cufflinks. Only a small rose tucked to his chest. Calm. Controlled. But there was iron in his gaze, a storm behind steady eyes. "Thank you for coming," he said, voice low, carrying. "Tonight we celebrate the one who taught me what wealth truly means." He lifted a hand. The music stilled. The doors at the far end creaked open. A hush swept the hall. His mother entered. No jewels. No silk. Just a plain shawl and a soft smile trying to hide the tremble in her jaw. In her hands, again, a heavy basket, rough-handled, overflowing with bread she had baked herself. The smell drifted across the room, warm, honest, like a farm kitchen after rain. The basket sagged. Her arms shook. The hall watched. He did not move. He did not make them wait long, but he did make them see. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said quietly, "tonight your worth will not be measured by what you wear. It will be measured by what your hands are willing to carry." The fiancée swallowed. Her eyes darted to the crowd. Some stiffened. Some looked away. A man coughed into his glove. A woman whispered, "Is this a performance?" Another sighed, "It's unsanitary." Someone chuckled, brittle. His mother took another step. The basket wobbled. And then movement. A waiter, no more than 19, slipped from the shadows and rushed to her. "Amie, let me," he said softly, using the word with natural reverence. He steadied the basket with both hands. His palms went red against the rough weave. A teacher followed, the oldest in the room, spine curved from chalk and years. "I carried books heavier than pride," she murmured, taking a corner of the weight. A mechanic stepped up, oil still under his nails. Then a nurse still in scrubs, a shopkeeper with cracked thumbs, a gardener smelling of jasmine. Hands gathered, ordinary and unafraid. Silence folded around them like a blessing. The millionaire nodded once, gratitude glimmering. "Thank you," he whispered. But he was not done. He turned to the wealthy rose, the gleam and glitter, the polished manners. "Tonight, I ask each of you to sign one pledge." He lifted a leather folder. "A fund in my mother's name for widows, laborers, and the old who still carry more than they should. 10% at least of last year's profits. No hand that refuses will take a seat at my table again. Not in my house. Not in my company. Not in my city, if I can help it." A collective intake of breath. Chairs scraped. The banker reddened. The jeweler stared at his shoes. A few faces turned to ice. A few to shame. The fiancé stepped forward, voice thin. This is unfair. Public pressure is cruelty dressed as honor. People give quietly. Cruelty, he asked, and the single word struck like a bell. Cruelty is a closed door and a laughing window. He placed the folder on the table. One by one, the ordinary stepped up first. The waiter placed a coin, his coin, on the folder's edge. The teacher scribbled her name on a volunteer sheet. The nurse added hours instead of money. The mechanic promised repairs for free. The gardener offered seedlings for the widow's yards. Hands. Simple, open, steady. The mayor hesitated. The room watched. He reached for a pen, jaw tight. Signed. The trustee followed, then the jeweler, then the banker with a stiff, shaking hand. The fiancé stood frozen, breath shallow, eyes glistening with something half pride, half fear. When his mother tried to speak, her voice cracked. Why all this for me? He bent to her ear. Because you carried me when the world wouldn't. A beat. A soft smile. Tonight, we teach the world to carry one another. He lifted his head. There is one more test, he said. Not of signatures. Of truth. The doors opened again. A line of elderly guests stepped in, stooped men and women from the worker housing nearby, invited quietly, wrapped in their best clothes, hands empty, hearts heavy. They paused, uncertain, blinking into the bright. Their eyes asked the room a single, trembling question. Will you make space for us? The violins began again, slow, tender. The millionaire stretched his arm toward the long, glittering table. Seats, he said softly. Let's see who give theirs up. Who will rise? Who will look away? And what final choice will the son make about the woman who mocked the hands that raised him? Chairs whispered back. Cutlery chimed like startled birds. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then the nurse stood, pushing her chair with a firm scrape. Please, she told an old man with a cane, this is yours. The waiter followed, guiding a woman to his seat. The mechanic, the teacher, the gardener, each rose without fuss, without speeches. Simple like breathing. The millionaire watched the first ripple of kindness break the surface. Across the table, the banker clung to his place. His knuckles whitened around a crystal stem. The jeweler stared at his reflection in a spoon. A pair of socialites adjusted napkins and looked anywhere but at the elderly guests lined at the door. A hush, tight and delicate as spun sugar, stretched. The mayor stood, painfully slow. His wife touched his sleeve, then rose as well. The trustee exhaled and followed. A few more chairs scraped back, spiders of sound on the marble floor. Thank you, the millionaire said quietly. All of you. He turned to the fiancée. Her eyes were red from sleeplessness. Her hands that once waved away a plea at a gate, trembled at her sides. She got up. The gesture seemed to cost her something raw. She walked around the table, stopped before the smallest woman in the line. Someone's grandmother, sorry faded, hair a snow of wisps. I held my chin too high, the fiancé whispered. May I hold your hand instead? Her fingers reached, tentative, not rehearsed. The old woman took them, thin and warm. The fiancé led her to her chair and stayed standing beside her, head bowed like a penitent. The room shifted. You could feel it, the temperature of pride cooling, the sound of hearts recalibrating. Not everyone rose. Some never would, but enough did to turn the tide. Dinner began not like a gala, but like a village wedding. Bread passed from palm to palm. Laughter loosened. The violin found a humble melody. The millionaire broke a loaf and placed the first piece on his mother's plate, then on the plates of the weary, who had just sat. His mother's eyes shone wet and bright. She squeezed his wrist. He lifted his glass. To hands, he said, the hands that lift, mend, teach, feed, and forgive. Glasses clinked. A few stayed heavy on the table, untouched. He noticed. He remembered. After the dishes cleared, he called for the pledges. A clerk approached with the leather folder. Pages filled with signatures, promises, and here and there, blank lines like small silences on paper. He didn't flinch. Names matter, he said, voice even. Not because of fame, but because they carry our choices. Tonight, I will read the names of those who chose to carry with us, and those who chose not to. We will remember both. So one day, those who refused might find courage to return. A murmur, embarrassed, defensive, hopeful. He read. The room listened. Some names drew nods. Some drew sighs. A couple drew shame. When he reached the banker, he paused. Then, to everyone's surprise, added softly, he signed half. He will return tomorrow with the rest. I trust him to keep his word. The banker's eyes glistened. He didn't look at anyone. He simply lowered his head, transformed by the weight of being seen and not condemned. Then he turned, slowly, to the fiancée. The hall held its breath. You asked for forgiveness, he said. Forgiveness is not a coat you wear for a night. It is a road you walk. I cannot rebuild what broke between us. Not yet. Maybe not ever. His eyes softened. But I can ask you to help me build something for others. He gestured to a side door. It swung open. A small storeroom brimmed with folded blankets, winter shawls, sturdy shoes, sacks of rice. Quiet, practical kindness. This is where we begin. Every week. With our hands. No cameras. No headlines. Her mouth trembled. May I start now, she asked. He nodded. Start with my mother's basket. She went to it, lifted its frayed handles, and did not wince. The weight tugged at her shoulders. She carried it to the storeroom, step by steady step. Something loosened in the air. The crowd exhaled like a tide, pulling back. The evening thinned into starlight. Guests drifted out, softer than they'd arrived. The ordinary stayed to sweep, stack chairs, fold linens. The millionaire walked his mother to the courtyard bench, the same bench where the first fury had begun. Crickets threaded the silence. A cool breeze combed the trees. She's trying, the mother murmured. She is, he said. People can learn. Even you, she teased, eyes crinkling. He laughed, head bent. Even me. He reached into the basket and took out one last round of bread, still warm in its heart. He broke it, handed her a piece, kept one for himself, and set the rest on the bench, an offering to anyone who might pass hungry in the night. They sat without words, listening to the small sounds that stitch a life together. The broom whispering against stone, distant footsteps, the sigh of lanterns. At the gate, the fiancée paused. She turned back. I'll be here at dawn, she said, voice steady. To carry, to cook, to learn. The mother smiled and nodded. The son didn't answer. He only looked at her hands and, for the first time, didn't see arrogance. He saw effort. He saw room. He lifted his face to the stars, their cold fire gentle on his skin, and breathed in the night that had finally become honest. When power meets humility, which one truly changes the room? If you were there that night, would you have given up your seat? And what weight in your own world can you choose to carry for someone else today?